Hello learners! Welcome back to our MAPE 9. Today's lesson will be an incredible learning journey to the Western art of the Renaissance and Baroque periods. We will also review the elements and principles of art. Get your module, learning activity sheets, and your pen as we unfold the different masterpieces of these periods. Come and join me in our art terrific adventure. You have previously learned the elements and principles of art, as it is fundamental learning in this subject. When we say elements of art, these are the stylistic features included within an art piece to help the artist communicate. Let's see if you can still remember the elements of art, shall we? Let's play Unscramble It! Let's go!
Number 1. It is the fundamental element of all drawings. The answer is line. Line is the first and most versatile of the visual elements of the art. It can be in horizontal, vertical, diagonal, straight or curved, dotted or broken, thick or thin. In order to be a line, the mark's length must be longer than its width. Number 2. It is a two-dimensional enclosed space. The answer is shape. Shape is a bounded two-dimensional form that has both length and width. It can be natural or man-made, regular or irregular, representational or abstract, geometric or organic, and transparent or opaque. Number 3. It is an element of art that involves light. The answer is color. It is the visual element that has the strongest effect on our emotions. We use color to create the mood or atmosphere of an artwork. There are 3 different components to color. The first one is hue, which is the name that we give to the colors like red, yellow, blue, etc. Second one is intensity, which refers to the vividness of the color, also known as saturation. And the third one is the value. It shows the darkness or lightness of a color. Color can be used symbolically or to produce a pattern or to show contrast in a piece. Number 4. It is the lightness or darkness in color. The answer is value. It is an element of art that refers to the gradual change of lightness or darkness of a color. It is created when a light source shines upon an object, creating highlights, form shadows, and cast shadows. Colors can have value too. In painting, value changes can be achieved by adding either black or white to the chosen color. Number 5. It is the surface quality that can be seen and felt. answer is texture. It is an element of art that refers to the way things feel or look as if they might feel if touched. It can be hard or soft, rough or smooth. It can be tactile or visual. Tactile texture is the real thing. It is the actual way a surface feels when it is felt or touched. Visual texture, on the other hand, is the illusion of the surface's texture. The textures that you see in a photograph are visual textures. Number 6. It is a three-dimensional shape expressing length, width, and depth. It is form. It is an element of art that is three-dimensional and encloses volume. It includes length or height, width or depth. Some common forms are cones, pyramids, spheres, and cubes. Number 7. It can be a positive or negative. The answer is space. It is an element by which positive and negative are defined. Positive space refers to the main focus of a picture, while negative space refers to the background, foreground, and middle ground. Space can be manipulated in art based on how the artist uses lines, shape, form, and color. Always remember the 7 elements of art: line, shape, form, space, texture, value, and color.
This time, let's review the principles of art. Principles of art represent how the artist uses the elements of art to create a painting, drawing, and other work of art. Let's have another activity. Choose the correct principle of art in the box for each item. Ready? Let's go!
Number 1. It is a way of combining elements to add a feeling of equilibrium or stability to a work of art. The answer is balance. Balance refers to the weight of objects and their placement in relation to each other. There are 3 major types. We have symmetrical, asymmetrical, and radial. Symmetrical balance occurs when equal weights are on equal sides of a composition. Asymmetrical balance, on the other hand, is caused by an equal visual weight on either side of the composition. It is when objects do not mirror each other perfectly, shifting the balance to one side. It is often done to highlight an object in relation to another. And the third one is radial balance. It is when objects are distributed all around a central point. Number 2. It refers to the arrangement of opposite elements and effects. Find the principle of art. Go! The answer is contrast. Contrast is a way of combining elements to stress the differences between those elements. For example, light and dark colors, smooth and rough textures, large and small shapes. Principle number 3. A way of combining elements to stress the differences between those elements. What is it? The answer is emphasis. Emphasis is the created center of interest. It makes certain parts of an artwork stand out. It is used to attract viewers' attention to a particular area or object. Principle number 4. It is a way of combining similar elements in an artwork to accent their similarities. What is it? The answer is harmony. Harmony is about repetition and relationship between elements. Harmony is the sense that all of the elements of your design fit together. This creates a sense of connection between the objects, creating a sense of flow. Harmony is one of the most important aspects when it comes to the principles of art. Principle number 5. It is a principle of design concerned with diversity or contrast. What's the answer? The answer is variety. It is the use of several elements of design to the viewer's attention and to guide the viewer's eye through and around the work of art. It is the complement to unity and harmony, and it is needed to create a visual interest. Principle number 6. It is a principle of design that indicates movement. Find the principle of art. The answer is rhythm. Rhythm is created by the careful placement of repeated elements in a work of art to cause a visual tempo or beat. The eye can be directed, for example, along edges and by means of shape and color. Without movement, artwork becomes stagnant. Principle number 7. It is a principle of design that refers to the relationship of certain elements to the whole and to each other. What is it? The answer is proportion. Proportion is the feeling of unity created when all parts relate well with each other. Human body is the best example. Another example is if you are painting a portrait of a dog and a person. The dog should be at the correct scale in relation to the person. Principle number 8. It is the feeling of harmony between all parts of the work of art, which creates a sense of completeness. What is it? The answer is unity. Unity is the overall organization of the work. You might achieve this through any kind of grouping of objects. Any kind of similarity will help to strengthen the sense of unity you feel when looking at a series of objects. Unity is the principle of art that gives an artwork a feeling of oneness. Unity and harmony are similar, but unity is broader. There are numerous ways to create unity in art. Some of those ways are particular to individual artists' style. Unity can be achieved through the use of similar shapes, a common pattern, space, and a common background. With better unity, an artwork is more organized and easier to understand. Principle number 9. It is the repetition or reoccurrence of design element, exact or varied, that establishes a visual beat. What is it? The answer is pattern. Patterns can be in shapes, lines, or colors to create a visual effect that helps carry the viewer and artistic idea throughout the work. Principle number 10. It is the use of two or more elements or forms within a composition. What is it? The answer is repetition. Repetition is the systematic arrangement of a repeated shape or form that creates patterns.
Were you able to answer the activities correctly? Amazing! It's time to explore the arts of the Renaissance and Baroque periods. Renaissance comes from the word renaître, which means rebirth, revival, and rediscovery. During this period, there was an economic progress. People were eager to study the ancient philosophy and artistic values. They looked back to the golden age of Greece and Rome, which focuses on the harmonious development of the person through a sound mind by the practice of athletics. The Renaissance also held up their ideal of the well-rounded man, knowledgeable in a number of fields such as philosophy, science, arts, including painting and music, who applies his knowledge to productive and creative activity.
Italian Renaissance began in the late 14th century. It was an era of great artistic and intellectual achievement with the birth of secular art. Secular art means an art that does not have a religious theme. The Renaissance art was focused on realistic and humanistic art. It was characterized by accurate anatomy, scientific perspective, and deeper landscape. Renaissance art is the art of calm and beauty. Its creations are perfect. They reveal nothing forced or inhibited, uneasy, or agitated. Each form has been born easily, free, and complete. Their paintings depicted real-life figures. Their architectures were characterized by its symmetry and balance, and their sculptures were naturalistic portraits of human beings. The Renaissance was a period of artistic experimentation. It brought man into a full view, just like the human figure in Greek art.
Renaissance art marks the transition of Europe from the medieval period to the early modern age. Let's have a glimpse of these beautiful masterpieces. Let's name a few. Did you know the artists behind these extraordinary works of art? It's time to know them better.
Our first famous Renaissance artist was Michelangelo di Lodovico Buonarroti Simoni, 1475 to 1564. He was an Italian sculptor, painter, architect, and poet. He was considered the greatest living artist in his lifetime, and ever since then, he was considered as one of the greatest artists of all time. A number of his works in paintings, sculpture, and architecture rank among the famous in existence. Two of his best known works were the Pieta and David, were sculpted before he turned 30. In his Pieta, the Piety, which was installed in St. Peter's Basilica, Vatican City, was the portrayal of pain through the idea of redemption, as represented by Madonna holding Christ's body in her arms. Our next famous artist during the Renaissance period was popularized in present times through the novel and movie Da Vinci Code. His real name is Leonardo di Ser Piero da Vinci. He was a painter, architect, scientist, and mathematician. He is known as the ultimate Renaissance man because of his intellect, interest, talent, and his expression of humanist and classical values. He is widely considered to be one of the greatest painters of all time, and perhaps the most diversely talented person to have ever lived. His well known works were The Last Supper, which was the most reproduced religious painting of all time, and the Mona Lisa, which was the most famous and most parodied portrait. Our third famous Renaissance artist was Raffaello Sancio da Urbino, 1483 to 1520. Raphael was an Italian painter and architect of the High Renaissance period. His work was admired for its clarity of form and ease of composition, and for its visual achievement for interpreting the divine and incorporating Christian doctrines. Together with Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci, he formed the traditional trinity of great masters of that period. His main contributions to art were his unique draftsmanship and compositional skills. Some of his famous works were The Marriage of the Virgin, The School of Athens, and The Transfiguration, which was his last painting that he worked on up to his death. This painting exemplifies Raphael's development as an artist and the culmination of his career. The subject is combined with an additional episode from the Gospel in the lower part of the painting. The fourth famous Renaissance artist was Donato di Niccolo di Beto Bardi, also known as Donatello, 1386 to 1466. He was one of the Italian great artists of the period. He was an early Renaissance Italian sculptor from Florence. He is known for his work in bas-relief, a form of shallow relief sculpture. Some of his works include David. The bronze sculpture was the first large-scale freestanding nude statue of the Renaissance, and the statue of Saint George.
Baroque was derived from the Portuguese word barroco, which means pearl of irregular shape. It describes a fairly complex idiom and focuses on painting, sculpture, as well as architecture.
Characteristics of Baroque painting. Number 1. Realism. It was realistic and there was no attempt to idealize the subject. 2. Movement. Figures were shown in dynamic postures. Compositions were not necessarily symmetrical. 3. Color. Painters created forms directly from color. Sometimes they didn't draw preparatory sketches. 4. Light. Artists contrasted light and dark to make a scene more dramatic. 5. Subjects. Painters painted religious, mythological scenes and portraits. But there was also a new interest in everyday scenes and still life. Characteristics of Baroque architecture: twisted columns, sometimes simply decorative instead of supportive. More curves instead of straight lines. Highly decorative details and ornaments. Appearance of movement. Towers or domes. An abundance of windows. Broad naves. Ceiling frescoes. Optical illusions, and blending of paintings and architecture. Baroque sculptures were often made of rich materials such as colorful marble, bronze, and even gilded with gold. In Baroque art, there was generally action and movement, like angels flew, people fought, and saints rose to the heavens. Here are the famous Baroque artists and their artworks. Michelangelo Merisi da Caravaggio, 1571 to 1610. He was better known as Caravaggio. He was an Italian artist who wanted to deviate from the classical masters of the Renaissance. He was an outcast in his society because of his own actions and the lack of modesty and reverence for religious subjects in his paintings. Perhaps he started out as a specialist in his paintings of still life, especially fruits. One of his famous paintings was the Conversion of St. Paul. Gian Lorenzo Bernini, 1598 to 1680. Bernini was an Italian artist and the first Baroque artist. He practiced architecture and sculpture, painting, stage design, and was also a playwright. He was also the last in the list of the dazzling universal geniuses. As a prodigy, his first artworks date from his 8th birthday. Among his works were the sculpture of David and the famous Ecstasy of Saint Teresa, which was probably his greatest achievement. Peter Paul Rubens, 1577 to 1640. Rubens was a Flemish Baroque painter. He was well known for his paintings of mythical and figurative subjects, landscapes, portraits, and counter subjects, and counter-Reformation altar pieces. His commissioned works were mostly religious subjects, history paintings of magical creatures, and hunt scenes. Some of his famous works were Landscape with a Tower and Portrait of Ellen Formo. Rembrandt Harmensen van Rijn. Rembrandt was a brilliant Dutch realist, painter, and etcher. He is generally considered as one of the greatest painters and printmakers in European art. He followed no particular faith, but was interested in spiritual values and often chooses religious subjects. Rembrandt shares with Rubens the revolution whereby painting came to depict the more personal aspects of the painter, his own home, and his family. No artist has painted himself as often as did Rembrandt. His concept of himself continued to deepen in grasp and subtlety, while his technique grew more daring. He had produced over 600 paintings, nearly 400 etchings, and 2,000 drawings. His well-known work was his self-portrait in old age. Diego Velázquez, 1599 to 1660. Velázquez of Spain developed out of the Baroque. He was one of the finest masters of composition and one of the most important painters of the Spanish Golden Age. He worked out solutions to pictorial problems of design that transcend the style of any period. Velázquez was the case of a painter who discovered his avocation almost at the very start of his career. The passion for still life frequently emerges in Velázquez's art. Some of his famous works were The Surrender of Breda and The Las Meninas.
Did you have a good time on our learning journey today? Awesome! And that brings us to the end of our lesson. This has been Teacher Chloe. See you in our next Art Terrific Adventure.